You know, the sprigs rattling on the dressing room floor are a lot like the clatter of the old hobnail boots scraping over the cobblestone streets of Sydney way back in the early years of the century. And that's where this club was born and nurtured, through the workers, who you could say are still the grassroots of South Sydney today. And we're not even showing a sign of a grey hair as we turn a page into our 80th year. This is our heritage, and you could say the history of the game, as seen through the eyes, the bruises, and the hearts of the players in Australia's oldest club. This is their story, the story of the pride of the league.
Was such a memorable year for Souths. They were welcomed as an official member of the New South Wales Rugby League and capped off the occasion by becoming the first premiers in the competition, defeating Easts in the final 14 points to 12. 1925 marked the start of South's first golden era. Alf Smacker Blair had taken the first step in becoming a legendary South Sydney captain by heading a side that, at the time, were seemingly invincible. The club swept all before them that year, winning the premiership with the first going through the season undefeated. Added to that, the City Cup and premiership victories for the reserves and the third-grade sides. For the Red and Greens, the next 2 years were almost a repeat of 1925. The firsts and the reserves winning the premierships. Smacker Blair, a brilliant inspirational leader, rated one of the great captains, was rewarded for his outstanding leadership qualities by being named captain of the New South Wales side in the interstate competition. Another integral member of these all-conquering premiership-winning sides was a magnificent running forward by the name of George Treweek, who originally came to Sydney as a fullback, but carved a reputation as one of the great second rowers of all time. In fact, old-time league scribe Tom Goodman, years later, was to call him the greatest second rower of them all. There are many stories told of his memorable performances, and one of the greatest happened on June 18, 1927. South and St George, the two toughest packs in the comp, tore into each other like men possessed. Tempers flared, resulting in two Souths forwards in O'Connor and Lapham being sent from the field.
Blair pulled Albert Carr out of the forwards, out into the backs, and left Kavanagh, Root and myself in the front row. We had the three pack. And St George, for some reason or other, they stuck to their six. They didn't pull a forward out to match the extra back we had. And I think we stood up to the six forwards and the backs did the rest. And it was a marvellous day for us.
Just one of the many shining highlights in a career of memorable moments for this brilliant forward. Meanwhile, there was no stopping the red and green machine, with the first tasting another premiership victory in 1928. This time, booting the Rabbitohs to success was their prolific point scorer, Benny Waring, ranked amongst the all-time great wingers. He took over where Horder left off. Waring was not only a fine goal kicker, but a freakish handler of the ball and blessed with dazzling speed. He was a New South Wales team regular, but was also considered one of the unluckiest players in that, despite his high rating, he only played one test match for Australia. Souths were also being well served by Harry Finch, yet another brilliant winger who played 68 first-grade games for the club. 1929, and despite the departure of Treweek, Marr, Root, Finch and Cadwell midway through the season for the Kangaroo Tour, a depleted South Sydney still managed to notch up another premiership victory to make it 5 in a row. Souths in fact won 15 of their 18 encounters that year, helped along by the talents of such players as Dave Watson, the O'Connor brothers, Oscar Quinlivan, the first of 5 brothers to play first grade for South Sydney, and Jack Y. On October 4 of that year, Souths, led by Alfie Blair, headed out of Sydney bound for Auckland for 2 matches. And this was to be a first for the club and an appropriate reward for the club's first golden era in rugby league. '47 also marked the signing of a youngster who was to become a truly extraordinary rugby league player. He was, and still is, the most famous Rabbitoh of them all, Clive Churchill, who went on to dominate his era. The Little Master was born in the Newcastle area and was first spotted by the great Jersey Flegg while playing in a combined high schools competition at the SCG. However, it was Churchill's brilliant performance for Country against City that prompted Souths patron Dave Spring to sign the Hamilton youngster. The rest is now history. And to further enhance the ranks, the year also marked the signing of a player who was to average more than a try a game with Souths, the grand finishing winger, Johnny Graves. It was 1950 that saw the start of another marvellous era after 18 long seasons out in the cold. September 16 at the Sydney Sports Ground, and Rayner's men defied Western Suburbs to win the final and the title 21 points to 15. What a team! Players like Churchill, Smales, Atkinson, Wolfe, Graves, Stewart, Haywick, Cowie, Rayner, Purcell, Donahue and Hamilton were the toast of the rugby league world. It was a tremendous recovery from the black period when the club won only 1 game in 2 years. And there was even more to celebrate during the year. Clive Churchill's career took another giant step when he was appointed captain of the Australian side to play Great Britain. Other Rabbitohs in the Test team included Purcell, Cowie and Graves, who all performed with distinction. And who will ever forget that afternoon of July 22, 1950, and the third and deciding test?
10 minutes from the end, 6'3" right winger Ron Roberts outran the hopelessly weary defence to score the only try of the match. Australia won the Ashes for the first time in 30 years, their second victory at home. Churchill was acclaimed and cheered by his teammates from the field in what he calls his greatest moment.
'51, and another terrific year for Souths. They were invincible and ended up giving Manly a pasting in the grand final, 42-14, to take out the premiership. 1952, and South supporters had high hopes of making it 3 straight, but such was not to be. The Rabbitohs met West in the grand final, and just prior to the kick-off, Captain Jack Rayner had cause for concern.
Well, Johnny used to tell me that we were odds on to win, and when the game started, we'd blown to odds against. So I don't think we were allowed to win. We tried hard enough, but we weren't allowed. McCready scored a try. Oh, he and Frankie Tropper were involved in a try, which I'm sure was quite legitimate and was ruled back, and it was 5 points early in the game. And we never got back into the game.
Smales then went over in the corner, but referee Bishop pulled play back for a double movement. Shortly afterwards, Smales was at it again, and this time Bishop ruled a fair try. It was a try by Fitzgerald that sealed the fate of Souths, West's winning 22 points to 12, and a disappointing and controversial end to what had otherwise been a most successful season for the Rabbitohs. John Graves was the top scorer for the season with 168 points. Graves was undoubtedly one of the finest players of his time and one of the most popular men in league. Jack Rayner again.
Yes, Johnny was. Johnny's a very kind-hearted, a good team man, very generous. I'll never forget one day we played Manly at Brookvale Oval when it was the showground, and I gave John the kick at goal, and it was right from the sideline, and someone said, "You'll never kick that, Gravesy." He said, "You'll read about it in the Herald tomorrow." And the ball went straight between the posts. And that's the type of character he was. he always used to tell me, he said, I've got a double yoker in there. My heart's not small, it's a double yoker. And I think that's what kept John alive, because he was such a strong-willed man, and he was sincere and very generous.
The following season saw the Rabbitohs have one of their greatest years. The Firsts, after losing their first 3 games, stormed home in the second round and took out the premiership, downing St George 31 points to 12 in the final. And Chika Cowie topped his 100 first-grade games with the club. 1954 was another epic year for the Rabbitohs, and one which also saw the league introduce the system whereby a grand final must be played. South won 14 of their 18 matches before meeting Newtown in the premiership decider. Victory went to the Rabbitohs 23 points to 15. Ian Moyer had emerged a try-scoring machine, capping the season off with 23 tries, many of them sparked by Churchill. On the representative scene, the Little Master was still in full flight, leading Australia to another Test Series victory over Great Britain, including 17. But the year veteran South fans will remember always was 1955. Souths began the season disastrously, losing 7 of their first 10 matches. The golden era had seemingly come to an end. There was now no margin for error. South had to win every match to retain their crown. The second last round against Manly at Redfern Oval became a league folklore. In one of the most dramatic results in the club's history, Captain Clive Churchill had to leave the field after injuring his arm. South's rubber, Albert Lupton, takes up the story.
Hello. Doctor came in and he had a look at him. He said, "Oh, it's broke, Clive. Your forearm's broke." Clive said, "Oh, I want to go back. Get sticking plaster or something." So Dr. Thurlow said to me, "See if you can get a cardboard corrugated one." And I walked out the little kiosk next door, and by me, they just emptied one. And I run in back quickly, and the doctor cut it up and put it on him. He run back, and then we got a penalty. And they asked Jack Rayner to let him have the kick of the go right out on the, 25. And Barmy put it down, he kicked the goal, and South beat them by 1 point.
Yes, the mighty Churchill finally kicked the winning goal after Cowie had scored in the corner in the last seconds of the match. Churchill didn't play for the rest of the season. The final series was tight all the way, and the grand final against Newtown produced yet another nail-biting finish. Cole Donahue scored a late try, and Bernie Purcell was left with a pressure kick to seal a premiership victory.
It was an easy kick, if you could say it's an easy kick with a pressure kick like that, with the score 11-10 in favour of Newtown, and I thought to myself while I was putting the ball down, if I miss this, which is the quickest exit out of this Sydney cricket ground? Anyway, fortunately it went between the posts, and it was great.
Yes, it was the Rabbitohs' 5th title in 6 years. Purcell's 138 points and Moyer's 18 tries were the other highlights of what was a remarkable season. 1955, truly a year to remember. But lurking away in another victorious President's Cup side was a young player destined for future greatness, Bob McCarthy.
I don't love you anymore, and I'd walk out the door.
1962 also saw the emergence of 2 former rugby union topliners. Jimmy Lyle, who played only 1 club game with Souths before being picked to play for New South Wales against Queensland. And sprint sensation Mike Cleary, a bronzed medalist in the Commonwealth Games of that year. It was at this time that Cleary was declining a lot of offers from rugby league scouts so as to maintain his amateur status to compete in the games.
It was then explained to me that through South Sydney that if I wanted to do that, I could play as an amateur. It's never been done before. So I decided, well, look, I'll take the risk. I'll play with Souths, and as an amateur, they all said that my father got the money and I got cash paid to me, but I didn't. I took them on face value, and when I did turn professional in 1963, after being selected to go in the rugby league side to England, I then signed a contract and made it up from there.
1963, and the South's President's Cup side again swept all before them. Another star was in the making, Ron Coote. And down from Newcastle came a fiery young forward by the name of John Sattler. The first graders won only 4 matches that year, but the build-up was gaining momentum. The Rabbitohs' wealth of young talent was giving notice of great things to come. 1964 marked a year of revival, with the firsts just being pipped for a semi-final berth, and the South's President's Cup side continued its winning streak. In that side, 3 more players destined for the big time: Eric Sims, George Piggins, and Gary Stevens, grandson of Arthur Oxford, who recalls his first taste of big-time rugby league.
Yeah, I was in a trial game at the sports ground. It was against Western Suburbs. I remember I was playing C-grade, it was under-19s one year, and I was playing against Noel Kelly and players like that, and Peter Diamond. It was a big experience.
1965, and scenes never witnessed before at the Sydney Cricket Ground. For this was the year that an unbelievable crowd, officially numbered at 78,056, crammed in to watch the mighty St George Dragons do battle with Souths. Both sides had been tough and unrelenting throughout the year. Souths, the young challengers who dared to take on the might and experience of the mighty Dragon.
Longbottom kicks off for Souths, and the forwards move up as one man. Langlands runs the ball out and passes to Gasnier, who is quickly grounded by Coote and Moses. A tense, bruising forward battle is anticipated, with the experienced Saints pack ready to meet the challenge of their younger rivals. Walsh, a dummy half, sends to Ryan, who comes through in characteristic style as the Dragons lay the foundations of their softening up process. A penalty to the Rabbitohs. Eric Sims takes the kick from about 35 yards out. A President Cup player earlier in the season, Sims is playing only his 5th first-grade game.
I think this is what happens, and we were hungry to do for success, and I think that helped us too. But the recipe, was really that we were all fierce competitors, and we helped one another.
1971, and the Souths machine kept going full steam ahead. In the end, Souths went on to tackle their old foe St George in the grand final.
Pass from Sattler sends Coote through. On to McCarthy, who touches down, but it's no try. Coote's pass being ruled forward. A high pass from McCarthy is accepted by Pittard, and he steams through into the open with Waltham in pursuit and Grant in support. Breaking through Langland's tackle, Pittard charges for the line, but is brought down by Carr a few feet short after a 65-yard burst. To Sims, position for a field goal shot. Between the posts for the first point of the game.
Yes, a dour first half struggle, with the unusual scoreline of 1-0 at the break.
And it's the first time such a score is registered in a grand final. This being brought about by the reduction of field goal points to 1. Piggins slips a superbly timed pass to Stevens. On to Coote. The defense is scrambled as Brannigan heads for the line. Fending off Smith, Brannigan goes in for the first try. The forwards set up the backs. Sate's purposeful running splits the defense, and he's especially dangerous inside the 25. Conan works the forwards. Dummying, Sattler sends Coote through a narrow gap, and he's over. Charges head on. Again working the forwards, Grant sends to Coote with McCarthy in support on the inside. He takes the reverse pass and dashes 20 yards to touchdown between the posts. A simple conversion for Sims, and with little time left, Souths are safe. 16-10.
Souths had recorded their 20th premiership victory. And standing tall, John Sattler. His fellow players agreed. Sats stood alone as a leader.
He drove you all the way. He was an inspiration to, I think, everyone he played with. And he was just a winner, and he just wanted to win so hard.
If we were in trouble, he was first to take the ball up, and we just followed suit. And when it was heavy in defence, he was always first there, and he was putting the heavy stuff in, and we more or less responded to it.
He was always good on you if you went down, if you were down longer than what you should have been, and in them days we never used to go down too often, but no, he was a great captain, led by example.
He's a saint off the field, but he's a bloody villain on the field.
South's mighty run over the preceding 5 premiership seasons ended in 1972, the firsts being knocked out in the semis. At the end, John Sattler announced he was leaving the club and heading for Brisbane. Other legends like O'Neill, Coote and Brannigan were to follow. And in 1973, crowds had begun to slump alarmingly, and the Leagues Club was in financial strife. Committees were formed in a bid to rescue the ailing club. 1981, and one of the few highlights was the grand final victory by the under-23s, skippered by the very talented Craig Coleman. On another inspirational note, South took out the Rich Tooth Cup Series that year, down in Cronulla, 10 points to 2 in the final at Leichhardt.
Peter Tunks. Peter Tunks! Yes, he's over! If they hadn't tied it up, they have now. The Rabbitohs have taken the cup final. Look at the joy and the emotion. The ecstasy of it all.
The Rabbitohs were showing promise, but that seemed to be lost over the next 2 seasons, with the firsts failing to make the semis. 84 was a different story, however. South found a new lease of life and qualified for the 5 by down in Canberra in the midweek playoff. 4 days later, they tackled Manly in the sudden death semi, and after conceding 14 points early in the match, the Rabbitohs clawed their way back to win 22 points to 18. A performance that will live long in the minds of die-hard South supporters, including men like John Reardon, a solicitor businessman who was a vital cog in helping to save South from financial ruin in the early 70s, leading to his long reign as president of the Leagues Club. 1985 provided only moderate success for South Sydney on the playing field. The year will be remembered for the passing of the one and only Clive Churchill. The little master had fought so bravely against the toughest opponent of his life, cancer. Those fortunate to have attended the testimonial organised by South stalwarts Ron Coote, George Piggins, Gary Stevens, John O'Neill and company will readily tell you there has never been, nor likely to be, a night to eclipse the occasion. When Clive finally succumbed to the killer disease, it seemed all of Sydney were there to say farewell. Amid the sadness of 1985, there were some bright developments. The club announced a new sponsor, APD Snack Foods, whose Smith's Crisp sign became emblazoned on all jerseys. And a fiery forward was given the task of leading Souths in an attempted revival. Mario Fennick, a player imbued with fierce loyalty and a never-say-die approach, took over the captaincy.
Being captain of South Sydney is very easy because we all really love each other and we sort of care for each other, and basically I'm just sort of keeping an eye on things. I don't really have to do too much. Basically we rely on sheer spirit, and we have got a lot of ability, and we believe we can start a new era for South Sydney now.
1986 bubbled with tradition, nostalgia and the good old Rabbitoh spirit when George Piggins became coach. A down-to-earth communicator, George inspired the South players to finish second on the points table, only to see them lose both their semi-final matches. Les Davidson was selected for the Kangaroo Tour. The under-23s had a wonderful year, winning the premiership. And so to 1987. And after a slow and disappointing start, the season turned into one of great expectations. But the Rabbitohs again stumbled in the semi-finals, and that elusive 21st senior premiership crown was still in the future. In many ways, 1987 was the end of an era. The club decided to drop Redfern Oval as its home ground and to make the new multi-million-dollar Sydney Football Stadium the future South headquarters. It was an unpopular decision with many fans, but the general consensus was that Redfern Oval no longer suited the times. The move will not change a great tradition and spirit of South Sydney, born so long ago on that summer's night in 1908, and built up by generations of proud rabbitohs. And those early pioneers can look down on the most successful club in the long history of rugby league. Wonderful players, wonderful matches, so much to cherish.
It's glory to South Sydney, the pride of rugby league, the spirit of the Rabbitohs and all that they've achieved. And it's glory to South Sydney, get the lawyers on the phone, and we'll all stand together so the South can stand alone. We'll all stand together so the South can stand alone. We've got memories of McCarthy, Sadler, Satan, Sims, from the Little Master to Tugger and Craig Wynn. It's a kind of spirit creeps like them have never seen. You grow 6 inches taller when you wear the red and green. And it's glory to South Sydney, the pride of rugby league, the spirit of the Rabbitohs and all that they've achieved. And it's glory to South Sydney, get the lawyers on the phone, and we'll all stand together so the South can stand alone. We'll all stand together so the South can stand alone. There's more to this than money, there's passion and there's pride. With 100 years of history, we won't give up without a fight. So we're with you, Georgie Piggins, we won't give in to their greed. 'Cause if they dump South Sydney, we're dumping rugby league. And it's glory to South Sydney, the pride of rugby league, spirit of